So we have been given repeatedly over the last 2 years from our higher selves, as well as the higher beings and all the guides and beautiful ascended masters that we work with, have repeatedly given us this picture of, they said, the closest thing that you can equate to this whole thing you do of being human, this whole thing of incarnating into a human body and having a human life. They're like, it's like a video game. It's like how you guys play video games. You have all these levels that you play. You have these obstacles that you build in, these villains and these rewards and these powers that you earn. And, I mean, they just equate it completely to a video game. So then they told us last year in one of the sessions, they said, by the way, what's happening right now is you guys are creating entire new levels to the game, like levels that have never existed.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Quantum Realms 2021. And today I'm with my incredible friends, and I really mean this, incredible friends,
Donna McMurtry and Diana Adair.
So nice to have you beautiful ladies on for this wonderful series. Diana and Donna are quantum healers, and they are authors. And they're not authors of just a book. They're authors of 4 books with 2 in the works. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. We're also sisters.
Yes.
We're blessed with sisterhood and being best friends, as well as getting to be co-writers and getting to practice quantum healing together. I just want to add one thing that we do with quantum healing, because it's our favorite part of it, is we do professional surrogate sessions for people who cannot, who have maybe contraindications to going into hypnosis or into trance, or can't have a session for themselves. We offer together the professional surrogacy, and we love that side, especially of BQH, of Candace gifting us with this model of quantum healing called BQH. So, it's so good to see you though, Candace, and be with you today.
So really, really so good to see you too. And the 3 of us are kind of giddy because we're going to be meeting up in actual real life person in just a handful of weeks. And we're making all kinds of plans about that, and getting very excited about actually coming physically together, which we are learning more and more how important that is, and why maybe some of the people out there have been suggesting that we don't get physically together for a lot of different reasons, and we're more powerful that way. But you know our focus for this year's event, and that is being human in 2021. So you've been chatting about it, you've been thinking about it. What say you, DD Adair? What's it like being human in 2021?
Well, I think it's a whole new world. We have our experience so far, really since winter solstice of 2020. We feel like we have been fully in these new energies that are available to all of humanity, and becoming more and more available. So we feel like we've taken those first steps, and both of us, our lives look quite different. As far as, living completely from the heart space, for instance, is one thing, what we're working in and doing for the collective. So yeah, we'd love to share just what our picture has been of what it is to be human and be a whole new level of freedom, really, in 2021.
Well, and really it started, I was just thinking in our pre-chat that a year ago, we sat down with you, and we were actually in Washington at our sister's house in Paulsbo, the ground zero of the beginning of the last year, and how everything has completely shifted from that point, because we came home, everything was shut down. I shut down my business, never to go back. That was the beginning of completely changing my life on every level to be this new human. And I had made the decision a little before that of, I am just going to base my life on what feels good, what brings me joy, what feels aligned, and what I get excited and passionate about. And, the old programming is, oh, that won't work. That's fantasy thinking. Well, here I am a year and a half later, because I had made that decision in December of 2019. and I'm thriving on every level. And, you know, this year of not getting together, Donna and I traveled extensively. We were in different states in the United States, and just getting together with amazing people all over our country. And that has only increased. You know, I just got back from this magical, I mean, this interview is so perfectly timed, Candace, because I just came back from this hot springs in Arizona, right next to Phoenix. I'm not going to give the name, but it is one of those magical vortexes of creating and being the human that we want to be. And it was so visible. And Dolores Cannon was there. I met this woman. So I was the 9th person in this goddess tribe, which included men and women. And one of them, who I would say is like the big kahuna, she's just this beautiful woman. She has full memory of other lifetimes. And she knew that who she is now was a walk-in at age 11. And before that, who was in her was her grandfather. And so we started talking. I'm like, you don't know Dolores Cannon by chance? She's like, oh, yes. She's the one that helped me understand that this was actually real, because she had known these things on her own. And then she had found Dolores Cannon's books and had it validated. Mm-hmm. So I just got back from this vortex of the new reality and the new human. And it's a whole group of people there doing what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Creating their lives, walking away from their old jobs and their old businesses. And a lot of these people are healers and writers and art dealers and have had, you know, incredible lives like we have, and are still choosing to let all that go and surrendering to just being in the flow of these energies that are here now. Mm. So, oh my gosh, I'm just so jazzed still. And I feel, even though I just went and sat in water and like connected with people who are now part of my soul family, I really didn't do anything. But my world has profoundly changed yet again, because I just was like, I'm going to keep my heart fully open no matter what. And to me, that's, you know, we talk about staying resourced. And that's one of the points we wanted to share, because as being human in 2021, that's kind of the baseline for us, is continually resourcing ourselves, staying connected to source energy.
Mm-hmm. And if you even look at that word, that is, I would say, our primary focus day to day, moment to moment right now of how do we become the new human, or the humans that we want to be. How do we begin to create the life we want? How do we then create the communities we want and the worlds that we want, knowing what all is available to us now? The number one tool for us has been being resourced, staying resourced. And if you look at that word, even, it's we're resourcing continually, and we're doing that through every action that we take throughout the day. So from what we put in our bodies, to what we who we meet with in relationships and friendships, to what we read, what we watch, what we learn, what we study, what we offer to others. Everything that's part of our life right now could be under that heading of resourcing, of being resourced. Does that make sense, Candace? Are we explaining that well?
Oh, you are explaining it so very well. I love that you have focused on that, because it takes, you know, sort of an ordinary word in our lexicon and really looks at it a little more closely. I think I've, in the last year or so, been more and more aware of truly every thought that goes through my mind, every single thought. And what you were saying about making all these choices about, you know, what you put in your mouth, what you put in your body, how you're going to spend your time, who you're going to engage with, all of those things. But it even goes all the way down to thoughts and feelings. And we know that before you even have a thought, almost, and before you certainly feel a feeling, you have to think about it and choose it. You have to choose that I'm going to think this thing. You can feel it. If you really, really pay attention to your own thoughts, you know what kind of thought is getting ready to come up. Just a thought, not even anything you might say. Mm-hmm. And you can reform and redirect that thought as it's you know, gestating, right? And shift a little bit. And isn't that important as we move forward?
Yes. Yeah, so important. And, I would just love to offer for anybody who is like, I want to live life from a place of always being resourced. What's my first step or what's my first thing to do along those lines? And there's a very basic principle that I use to decide what is resourcing me and what is not. And that is every thought, everything I take in, everything I give out is either life-giving to myself and others, or it's life-taking. And so when you start to examine, for instance, your thoughts, like what you're talking about, is this thought giving more life, adding to my life, or is this stealing life force and vitality? Along those lines. So that's for people who want to step into a higher quality of living and of being, I would offer that very simple principle. What in your relationships is life-giving and what's life-stealing? What in the food you're taking in is life-giving and what's life-stealing? What in what you're learning or taking in through movies even, or television, or anything else that you're allowing to come into your mind and your way of thinking, what is giving you life and what is actually taking vitality from you?
Well, and I would add to that, I love that too. Thank you for that. I learned a lot from her, my big sis. I add to that the love and fear thing, because there's so much messages out there, and it's so, we're reactive creatures of habit. And so that's my base question too, is along with it, is this thought or reaction coming from a love base or a fear base? And not only for myself, but in, interacting with other people. I just recently had an experience. We're going to New York in May for a research trip for our next
New
book.
York, Candace.
New York.
Can you believe we're going to New York? That's weird.
That's big for you guys.
It's weird.
Yes, it is.
We're excited.
Yeah,
we're being called.
We're being called there.
Yeah.
And I rented this Airbnb for us in Montauk at the end of Long Island. We're researching where the Montauk Pyramid was and the ancient, cultures of North America right now. And the owner of it blew up my phone for a few days. Oh, all this stuff's happening here. And, here's this warning, and here's this, and here's that. And, for a second, I was like hooked, like, oh God, I got to do something. And then I sat back and was like, okay, so where's my reaction coming from? Oh, well, that's easy. It's fear. Okay, where's he coming from? And just sensing into his field. I don't need to know anything else. I don't want to. Oh, fear. Oh, okay. So then it was like, all right, what would I do if I was going to base my, choice and thoughts on love right now? Oh, I'd check in, I'd resource myself, come back into my inner being, connect with my inner being, and ask, what do I need to do? And the answer was nothing. Go sit in the water. Enjoy your day. Let it go.
Yeah.
So it's always right there. It's those, again, the thoughts. What do we choose to focus on? And what do we choose to think? Because our thoughts don't think us, we think them.
Yeah,
that's true. I kind of approached this same line of thinking with some of our other speakers and in some of the other interviews of this series. And I'll pose the same sort of question to you too. So you ladies know, because we've been doing these BQH and other quantum healing type sessions for long enough, we know that some of the biggest root causes of disease and illness and trauma and turmoil for people is denial of some things and suppression and holding on to something that they deny and they don't want to look at and they pretend is not there. So some of the newly awakened among us might be listening to you, and they may feel some grief or some anger, and they may think about conversations like this, and they may say, well, I'm not supposed to feel that way. There's a difference between letting it go and processing it, and rather than just denying it and tucking it away. How do you address that concept?
Well, I think for me, I have a practice of when I have like a fear thought or anger or guilt or shame or any of the emotions I don't necessarily want to feel, or resistance, is just, I guess I self-soothe in a way of this too belongs, honoring it. This too belongs. And so I treat them more as friends, and I'll have conversations with them, kind of like I did with the fear in that moment of, what are you here for? What are you pointing me to? What are you showing me or wanting to show me? And treating them, it's like the ego. I love, my ego is my friend, and we collaborate and we co-create together. And, you know, I give my ego jobs, and it's really grateful to have them because then I have something to focus on. And with the stuff that comes up around that, you know, some of my greatest self-healings have been when I've allowed myself to fully go into grief or fully go into anger. I had a recent experience a few weeks ago of a few days of deep, deep grief around the wounding through the masculine and the wounding of my masculine. And it wasn't just like, oh, men are bad or anything else. It was for all of us, for them, for me, all of us humans. And so I literally had a couple of days where I just grieved deeply and surrendered to it. And then it moved into anger, and, you know, and just surrendering to the anger of, like, sat in my house literally and just yelled and was like, you know, F this, and just let it out and didn't attach it to anything. Just said, all right, this is the energy that wants to flow through. This too belongs. And let's see how it's here to serve me, because I do believe they're all here to serve us. It's the full array of being human, just like we have all the senses to experience through. We have all the emotions to experience through. So they all serve and teach.
Mhm. I love that. Just that simple tool of honoring this too belongs and acknowledging it helps it flow. That's what makes it flow. And when we deny, when we don't give our attention to that, whatever's calling to us, that's when it gets stuck and causes those problems. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a fine line, you know, because we just finished saying, choose your thoughts. And then we're saying, you know, but if it's coming up, you know, don't push it back down, really, you know, see where, like, go ahead.
But then the more that we practice differentiating between what's thoughts are just going on and available to us in the thought realms versus what's coming from inside of us, from more our body based inside of us, or even, you know, once you start practicing and asking that question, is this mine or is this just out there? You'll start to be able to differentiate those things. Yeah. I think I have been able to anyway, with practice. I mean, it takes time. We're not good at this stuff until we do it a bunch, I think.
And it still gets me too. Like I call it get hooked by something before I remember one of my tools. I'm like, oh, is this mine or is this in the collective? Because there's so much out there and we're part of it. We're all in it together. And to me, that's truly what that term is. We're in it together, is we're in this co-creation of this new, whatever this is we're creating, of being human and what that looks like. And we're now in a new frontier, as we know. So, yeah.
I would love to offer one more tool along these lines that I have been using so much this year. And that is when, like your example of when that Airbnb owner blew up your phone with his fear and you hooked into it. And that this happens a lot right now. It just does. There's just a lot moving and shifting. And so the tool I've been using is I've been channeling massive amounts of high source light. So love light, whatever you want to call it, joy light, peace light, to the sources of who's creating fear. So I'll give you an example. Our local natural grocery store, I love our local little mountain town natural grocery store. And last year at a certain point, they had always been not enforcing the rules of the virus, right? Well, then all of a sudden they decided to, from corporate, enforce the rules in our little mountain town store. And our mountain town did not respond. Our community does not respond well to that. And so it was a nightmare for these poor people working at natural grocers, of which my bonus daughter works there. My bonus daughter is one of the managers at this store, right? So I got all the inside scoop of what this was like for them to try to enforce some of these rules in an environment that was not receptive of rules. And for me, you know, her life was miserable. Everybody else's life, whether they were working at the store or shopping at the store, it was everybody miserable to have this dynamic, right? So I immediately, that on the day that got announced and all kind of hell started breaking loose, I immediately started channeling love light, higher understanding, higher information to the people high up at natural grocers, the corporate people making the decisions. I started channeling this specifically to them. Just give them support, give them more information. I'm not trying to control anybody. I'm not trying to make them make decisions. I just want to give them a higher frequency of support. And within 3 days, they had reversed that decision. Completely reversed it. It was all gone. And I'm not saying it's because of me doing this, but I've used this tool. I used it for our county that we live in for different happenings. I've used it with individuals. I've used it all the way up to the government of our country, the state leaders in different states, because this is something we can do. And it's not a controlling or a manipulating thing when you are literally channeling source energy in the forms of peace and harmony and joy and love to these people. It's powerful, Candace.
Oh God, I just love that so much. You know, I want to talk to you about a phrase that you said during all of that, because my heart went out and just met yours as soon as you said this. And that was this phrase, not being receptive of rules. That could be like my nickname. Of course, it's too many words. It's too many words to be a nickname. But that, you know, that used to be a descriptor of mine. And now I want to like put it on a badge and just, you know, or something, because I've been thinking so much about that concept and so much about freedom these last months and, you know, year or more. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. I mean, about being human and the rule following and how we navigate that now in 2021.
Yes. Well, first of all, let me offer you a fellow badge that we both have. It's called being a love rebel or a rebel of love. Okay. We're rebels, but we're love rebels.
That's right. And we actually had for our, you know, one of our talking points today, making your rules of the game, because that's been very important for us in being this new, creating this new human, is making our own rules. And I'll give you, I mean, we both have so many examples of this, but
can we back up one second?
Yep.
So we have been given repeatedly over the last 2 years from our higher selves, as well as the higher beings and all the guides and beautiful ascended masters that we work with, have repeatedly given us this picture of, they said the closest thing that you can equate to this whole thing you do of being human, this whole thing of incarnating into a human body and having a human life. They're like, it's like a video game. It's like how you guys play video games. You have all these levels that you play. You have these obstacles that you build in, these villains and these rewards and these powers that you earn. And, you know, I mean, they just equate it completely to a video game. So then they told us last year in one of the sessions, they said, by the way, what's happening right now is you guys are creating entire new levels to the game, like levels that have never existed. And so they're like, humanity in what we have called 3D, the old paradigms, has been playing all the levels that existed for that. And we've been playing them repeatedly and, you know, attaining all of the things. And they're like, now what you're moving into is you are literally creating entire new levels to the human game. And so we've been gaining like, okay, how do we do that? Like, you know, give us a little help. We're human, help us out. And they were like, one of how you start, step one is you start to make your rules of the game. How do you want that game to work? How do you want that game to look?
Yeah. And so we have.
So
It's amazing too, just flowing. There's such a flow to it and such fun and joy. I mean, moving about this world over the last year and being in all the different places we were and all the different interactions. And, you know, one of the rules we made up of our game is, like Donna was saying, moving ahead intentionally. Like everything on this trip is going to flow perfectly. And I'm going to just encounter the most beautiful connections with everyone on my path. And it just works. And we go in places like we've been, we have not been receptive to a lot of the world's rules this year, but we've been able to just move through those spaces anyway. Like we don't get stopped. We get welcomed.
they just don't apply to us.
Basically.
They just don't apply to us, Candace. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way. It's
No.
just they apply to people who want to fear something or want to be controlled. A lot of people want to be controlled, and I get that. Like, it's easier. It's easier to have something to follow and to be told what to think. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, God, people that want that, they should be able to have that. That is not me. So, do you want to know what my very first rule was that I made when I got this concept? Yeah.
I not only that, I want to know how many you have already. And yes, but number one, what was, like, you sat down with your pen and said one, and what was it?
This is a huge one, Candace. It's going to blow your mind. And it's changed everything for me. I said, I no longer want to learn from suffering. I value what I've learned from suffering. Like, I get it. I am so grateful. I am so wise, and I have so much richness inside of me from what I've learned from suffering. Like, I cannot express to you how much I get the lessons from all the lifetimes that I have experienced learning from suffering. It's so valuable. It's so valuable. Also, I'm done with it. Like, I just, how you have these knowings inside of you. You're like, okay, I've completed that level, like, about 800 times. I'm good. And so from that space, I just said, I no longer want to learn from suffering. I want to learn from peace. I want to learn from joy. I want to learn from harmony. I want to learn, I just named off, I have this list of all these things. And I didn't even know what that would look like when I'm saying this. Like, I want to learn from gratitude. That's a huge one, because I knew already I could. I've already been learning from gratitude. And that has been in place since winter solstice of 2020. So it's recent. And oh my goodness, I am just on the brink of this whole new world of what it looks like to learn from joy. There are so many, like, I'm looking at this whole new world of lessons. Like, oh, yeah.
Well, and the path of growth through joy, because we're always creating our path, right? We always have been. We just didn't realize how true that was. That it's intense.
It's intense.
I thought when I made that decision, sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
It reminds me, I don't know who said it, but sometimes we fear our greatness more than our limitations. And that really is what that's opened up to, is we're truly limitless. We can truly create whatever we want. And so choosing to learn through joy instead of suffering is saying, I'm going to learn through limitlessness instead of limitations. And wow, I mean, if talk about being challenged in a whole different way. And that was beautiful to me. And also, like, oh my God, what happened? Because I had no idea that,
I mean, we still don't really know what we're getting ourselves into. We know this much so far of what we've got ourselves into. So far, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
I have no idea what else is going to include.
Yeah. And then you bump up against the paradigm constantly,
Yes.
The paradigm of what has been. And it's not just us that's creating this new level. We all are. We know that, right? And so that's why you're doing in Quantum Realms Week. And that's why we do all these things, is we're putting into the collective what we want in there, right? And so we are rewriting all the programs as we go. And so, making the rules of our game is, I see it as also rewriting our programs. Well, what program do I want?
Here's another one.
Okay.
You ready? Do you want to know another one? Okay. We'll make these shorter. We're blabbering on.
So excited.
I decided I wanted my higher self to completely manage my quantum healing business as well as my author business. And what I mean by that is I didn't want to have to worry about screening clients. I didn't want to have to worry about what kind of a session each client needs or what directions, figuring out mentally what directions. I just wanted my higher self, as well as when I'm working with another client, their higher self and team, to take care of all that back end stuff. And I could just tune in. That was all I needed to do, was keep clear and tune in. And so that's all I've done, like, since 2020. Again, this was all part of my Winter Solstice 2020 package, my new launch. And so my higher self only brings me clients. I was like, I only want clients who are ready to do the work. I only want clients who are at the level of understanding that I can work with. Like, I'm just not that person to start at, point A anymore. There's lots of healers out there, beautiful healers who are doing that. I'm working at the mid to higher, not the highest, but I would say middle levels right now. And I'm aware of what I've been called to work, the levels I've been called to work with. So I want clients at that level, right, that fit me. I've only gotten clients, and this works. I've only gotten clients who are ready to do the work, who are getting exactly what I'm teaching, who, I do something different now in every single session, looks completely different. Some of them are, people sit up in the chair. They don't even lay down and go into a deep trance. They sit up and stay in a conscious trance and get everything they need. All the way to long sessions that are really deep. They just are all over the place now. And I don't have to think about that beforehand. I don't have to worry about what to do. I'm just making sure I'm clear and tuned in, and I just do what I'm told. And yeah, my higher self is 100% managing my business these days.
I think that's amazing. Wonderful. I had a client sit up in a BQH session just recently, and she kind of, and I tell my clients that they can do this. So she's having this whole experience, and she basically kind of sits up and say, is this the way it's supposed to be working? In the middle of the session. And I didn't, it was such a beautiful moment, because at that point, most of the conversation, of course, I soothed her and assured her everything was going exactly the way it should be. But in my own self, I was where you were, which was, isn't it wonderful that I really don't have to worry about any of that, that she even did any of that. That doesn't mean it's not working. It's, she went off track. This isn't right. I mean, none of that, zero of that came up at all inside. And I would like to take some of that feeling a little bit and like put it into an energy ball and throw it back to myself back in 2008, when I was first learning this and seeking so much. And new practitioners do this a lot. They approach the more experienced ones, as it should be, for learning and wisdom and sharing. And we learn so much from new practitioners too, still, by the way. But they'll often say this question, they'll say, am I doing it right? And the next thing you'll get from the rest of us is like great big grins. Because, you might as well be saying, what's the meaning of life, or whatever. And then we go back to the rules thing again, and if your heart is in the right space, there really isn't much that's going wrong. I want to reach back to when you were talking about gratitude, because I want to just share this. So many of the viewers know I throw it into these interviews and in other places, posts and stuff. So I'm the caregiver, primary caregiver of my dad, who's 90 now. And his needs are growing as he's aging. And my time for everything is shorter. My time for myself, my time for the rest of my family, my time to do this. I have a little bit of help, but it's only part-time, but I do, and I'm looking for more. But I have lots and lots of wonderful friends who ask me how my dad is doing, how my dad is doing. And this is one of those moments, I think, where you have the choice, right? You have the choice kind of where to go and how to think. So one choice could be basically, wow, haven't ridden many horses this year, or the place where it's the tasks on me have greatly increased. I could focus on that. But I've made it a very big practice and focus to be so very grateful that my father is in my home and not in a place that has been a place of, let's face it, horror for a lot of other elderly people out there these days. But even that he's in my house, I will say to my friends, you know what? He's still walking. He still uses the toilet all by himself. He can still feed himself. We're good, man. We are so good. And someday those things might change and we're still going to be good, because he's still going to be with me, and I'm going to keep him as long as possible. Hopefully that's all the way, I'll be keeping him with that, because he's in a mental place right now where moving him would probably kill him. It just would. It just would. So I'm just every day with my dad is such a gift. And it's Patricia Crowley is one of our speakers here, and she references this. What if this was your last day? and other thinkers and philosophers and healers talk about that too. But it's a relevant thing. What if this was your final day? What would you do differently?
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Well, and that makes me think of the get to versus have to. Like how beautiful that you get to do this for your father and have this time with him, because time's getting more, fluid and slippery all the time. So one day can feel like a month or an hour. And so this, it's so precious, these experiences. And I love that you are just leaning into that, surrendering into that of this is something to truly be grateful for.
Well, and I want to highlight, Candace, because it's so important. My friends and my clients who are not currently living the life they want to live. You said it. You said the key. It's choosing. I am choosing to focus on gratitude. I'm choosing to focus on that I get to do these things, that I have him, instead of all the other 80 not so pleasant things you could choose to focus on and talk about and live inside of. And it's not that we're in denial of the parts of life we don't want. It's just that we are choosing to magnify and be grateful for the parts that we do want.
Yeah.
And it's, if there's one key to having the life that you want, it is you have every minute choose it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and where you put your focus, I heard you say that too. You could think about all the times you haven't ridden your horses and wanted to, or other things, but you're focusing on what you want to. And that's been one of my huge rules for my new game is, it's not like resist or deny, but also I don't need to give it energy unless there's value there. So what am I going to choose to focus on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got a question. It's almost sort of snarky, but not really.
Okay, Rebel.
Snark away.
Okay, Rebel.
Not really. Yeah, right. Do you guys have the same rules? And who has more rules? You have more.
I'm all flow, baby. I just got back from the hot springs, sat naked for 5 days just because I wanted to.
I like organization and containers. I also don't like to be trapped by it, but I like, so I like them to be fluid and flexible, but I do like having focuses. I do like knowing, okay, where am I headed a little bit? Like what am I aiming for here? Mm-hmm. So I do have more rules.
Yes, it works well. She's very organized and I provide the energy and the flow.
And then she totally rebels against it and teaches me how to rebel again, all over again. So it's great. It works out.
I love it. Can you talk a little bit maybe about, unless you want to continue with the rules, which I'm happy to come back to, but sort of being this non-rule person that I am.
The first rule of making games is let them all go.
I like that. I want to know your perspective, because I know you know this when you're I know you explore this in your BQH focused sessions often, and that is the energies that are coming through. And so many people are so curious, and they're given so many different labels and so many different descriptions, how they're coming, where they're coming from, what they're providing, what they're actually doing, how people are experiencing them. Any talk about that? Being human in 2021, we're being bombarded with a bunch of new energies.
Yeah, I'll share what my experience is, and it doesn't really name or label the energies. It's just kind of the theme of these new energies. And for me, for us, it has been being handed the keys to 100% create our own life. So what it's felt like is that in the old set of dimensions, you could call it 3D or old Earth, or just the way that humanity has been living for however long, it seemed like our higher self, ourselves, created this life plan before we incarnated. And then we'd incarnate, and our higher self and team was always trying to kind of keep us on plan, right? Kind of trying to keep the human on plan. And really last year at the very beginning, it felt like my life plan came to a hard stop. Like your life plan, this is where your life plan ended that you made before you incarnated. Like you're at the end of that life plan. So now what? And it was this whole transition into now creating my life 100% and my life plan from within being human. So, and I think when I look back and kind of get a sense, I think that existed in the old set of dimensions for masters, like Jesus and Buddha and kind of the old, really old souls and masters that incarnated, I think had that ability. I think they created their life and their life plan from within being human, but I think it was probably hard as hell in those, those energies to do that. Now it feels like this new set of dimensions and these new energies are all about a lot of us, maybe half or more of us, maybe all of us, I don't know, being handed the keys and our higher selves and our team at our back saying, you're it now. You are creating as you go from within humanity right now. And the energies are all about supporting that. Like we have everything available to us now. We don't even know what all is available to us now, but it's all available to us now to be able to do this 100%. And I mean, not just create our life, but create the world, recreate the world, recreate every society, every country, every animal kingdom and plant kingdom and all parts of being human. We now have the energies available to us to 100% create it in whatever way we want to. That's what they feel like to me.
Man, that's like Magnus Opus. That was amazing.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
It is amazing.
Can you tell how excited I get talking about it? Yeah. Like we're on the brink, we're in it, but we're on the brink of it. We just stepped over the threshold.
Well, and seeing that happen in real time, I've had that reflected in the sessions. And I wanted to ask you this, Candace, because a lot of my sessions lately, like I had one last week, sometime recently, with a person who I would call mainstream. And she's a big ED of a big company in town. And I was like, oh, this will be interesting because she's nothing metaphysical about her. And she was somnambulist. I mean, she dropped down so deep, I had to play around with techniques to bring her consciousness up enough to talk to me. And then her higher self came through and sent her conscious mind on a hike because that's her favorite activity. And then we just had a conversation and they're like, no, we just need to go to source energy and, talk and we'll do the work from there. And that's been happening a lot in my sessions. Yesterday at the hot springs, I gave my friend Amory a session who just became a BQH practitioner in January, and they're lining up. It's crazy. It's so cool.
Yeah, Amory. I wanted Diana to tell you, Candace, about this. Amory took the course in January, and she has been doing so many sessions every day down there. Like people are lining up for her.
And some people still go to other lives, past lives, whatever you want to call it. But I've had an increase of people just going directly to source or directly to the healing space or directly to their higher self or source consciousness, the SC. And then because of this hot springs vortex and her going down and being like, I'm BQH, let's practice. And them lining up at her door, they've created this community and then holding the intention of sending that out into the collective, this group of 9 people. We did a whole ceremony on the full moon last Saturday around expanding this energy out in waves that we're collecting and amplifying here to the rest of the country. And do you know, the morning I left yesterday morning, she texted me and she said, they just lifted all mask mandates in all counties in Arizona. And to me, that's the energies coming in. They are palpable. And so when you get these communities or these collectives of people, whether it's 2 or more gathered together in the name of love and expansion, magic happens. And it's magic. Yeah. I mean, I just had such a literal example of that. I was telling Donna in this group that they're doing this, and this is happening all over. My friend wanted some pipe cleaners to make some little Mamet dolls. The next day, wouldn't you know it, some of the people we're hanging out with was like, hey, I have an extra packet of pipe cleaners. Does anybody need them? And another guy had just given away his coffee press to someone else who needed it. And one came to him while we were sitting in the pools. And I'm like, this is it. This is what it looks like. Yeah. Beginning to be human in the new earth and really doing these principles we're all talking about. When it shows up, because that's how we believe it, right? If you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, then it's real.
Well, and that is a label you could put on one of the new energies, is just this instant manifestation thing. Instant, like you have the desire or the thoughts, and it is going to show up 100 times faster than it ever did before. However, with one caveat that's important to know about this law of attraction, we get what we believe, not what we ask for. We get what's in here, not what we
Right.
are expanding out. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
work on this, work on what you believe, work on this.
You cannot fake it till you make
You
it.
can't fake it till you make it when you're
That's old
manifesting.
paradigm.
That is old. And some of that's the denying thing again.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
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 So yeah, instant creation of what we want, as long as we have cleared our channels and we truly believe, as what we're attracting is attracted to what we truly believe, not what we want to believe. Mm-hmm.
I think that, I wrote down some notes as you were talking about, your life plan ending is like, it's kind of like being in class and you're done with your test and you turned it in.
Right.
And you've got the extra time and you're sitting there going, okay, what am I supposed to do now? And it's like free time. Yeah. This is when you get to decide what you want to do. And that, when you're describing that really struck me, because, I pondered a lot of this as I was working with Dolores Cannon and then separating from her legacy and after her passing, and then creating something new, and then watching that thrive. And then coming to a place that I feel exactly what you're talking about, especially as 2020 was ending and 2020 was beginning. It was like, well, you might not have a lot of hours yet to do this, but the field and the possibilities is wide open. It doesn't have to exactly be the path that you're on right now. It can veer off, certainly in another direction. Diana, you asked about, if other clients were doing that, if they were going to that incredible space. And while I could talk about my own experiences, I actually found myself thinking about Dolores as it was like she's here and she's like communicating a little bit about that. Here's what I really believe. And this is not a minor observation or a generalized one. It's one come from deep pondering about this. This woman who I still, I just love her so much and I adore her, and I can't believe what she's done to the world, done for the world. And I also am so gratified at more and more people. Every day I get emails from people like, I just discovered her. I don't know how. I didn't know who she was. I just discovered her. And that, that her legacy is continuing this way is so wonderful. But when you ask, and I'm getting goosebumps even before I'm getting ready to say it, about, I think what happened with Dolores was, and it wasn't every session she did. It was not, I really would like to tell people out there, just because people had a session with Dolores, of course, it was an amazing, she's a master. You had the best session you could get. But they weren't all 100% pure magic. Why? She said it herself. 90% of what happens in a session is going to be up to the client. She's there connecting with, I always say, like a BQH, it's a chemistry experiment. You put these two things together, let's see what happens, right? And so there were many, many sessions, but there were sessions that Dolores Cannon did that were pure gold. Like kind of gold. And it wasn't absolutely every one of them. But why did she get them? Why was it her? Well, it wasn't because she said the words at the right speed with the right inflection at the right time. It was not that. It was something else. I think it was her contract. I think it was her intention. I think it was her heart space. I think it was so many of these things. And I think, what she was? She was like the bird dog for all of us. She was out there. She was blazing this path. And she was the first one out there, and she got a lot of this, scared up. And we're coming back. We're the team coming in behind her. And some of that now is becoming where, even I think for her, some of it was just, there was extraordinary sessions, absolutely extraordinary ones. And we've had them too, one that I'm thinking of right now is a story I tell very often about the woman with metal in her wrist and how that all turned out. And being so astonished by this outcome of the plate in her wrist, calling Dolores, and Dolores saying, you know, I just had a client who had metal in her body too. You know, it was so fascinating. And so that we are connected with her and the path that she started to blaze, that path is becoming more traveled, more accepted, more, easier seen, maybe, and I think that for those of us who are kind of following her footsteps, yes, more and more of these just incredible sessions are coming through. I absolutely believe that to be true.
That's great. Thank you for answering that. Yeah, I was just really curious if the rest of the community has been experiencing similar things, because so often it is like that. We're all, moving through this relatively in the same field. So, yeah.
Well, you want to finish up with any rules or any other energies as we come kind of towards the end of talking with you, beautiful sisters, today?
One funny, I think it's funny one is I decided, the 80-20 rule. What do they call that? There's like it starts with a P, doesn't matter. You know how if you put in 20% of the right effort, you'll get 80% results type of a thing. So I decided I wanted to do a 90-10 rule. I'm like, okay, I want to be able to put in 10% effort of the right effort, and which will just be dictated to me by my higher self and team. Thanks. Yeah, that'd be great. And then get 90% results. So that's happening. However, it's like what we were talking about, what we focus on and what we put energy into, and the instant manifestation, the instant creation, like that's been magnified. If I, without even thinking about it, am putting in 10% effort into something that doesn't really benefit me, doesn't really serve me, I still get 90% results of what doesn't serve me. So just something to keep in mind.
Works across the board.
That's hysterical. That's hysterical. Okay. So you teased me. I think it was even before we started to press record, but you teased me about the upcoming books. Why don't we end on that? Tell us what your upcoming projects are and how everyone can find you.
All right. So our website is ddadair.com, and that's ddadair.com. Everything that we do with quantum healing has a link there, and all of our books have links there. So that's kind of our hub. Quantumhealers.com is really what each of us uses for our individual quantum healing practices, as well as our surrogate. We have a page on quantumhealers.com for our surrogate business. Okay, so then on the book side, we have one nonfiction book called New Earth Healing, which Candace wrote the foreword to. And so that's available. The ebook is available for free. It will always be free. It is permanently free. The physical book is available on Amazon. It's called New Earth Healing by Dee Adair. We have the second New Earth book coming out, hopefully before summer. Candace, we have to chat about this one too. Yes. So just a little aside. But the topic of this one is the doorway of death. It's all about death. Wow. And the ebook on that one will be free. Permanently free. This is all information that comes through sessions, that comes from higher beings. And we were instructed to share this with humanity and for it to be free. So the second book coming out, nonfiction, later this year in the fall, we hope, also a New Earth Healing book with the topic of sexuality/spirituality.
Kind of the two our core energies, and really, and that's all about being human too, how to navigate this being human. And the death book, we really just were given that because it's been so up in the collective, and we also know it's not real, and it's, it's a program, it's heavily programmed. And so we're including in the book just some of the history of the beliefs around death from the different religions or, spiritualities or philosophies, because it's once we identify something, that's where that program came from, right? That's when we can release it and rewrite it the way we want to. So that's really our hope, is just to support people as we're moving out of this paradigm of, death and that's all there is, or what's after, or all that, to a freer way of seeing it all, knowing it, believing it, and experiencing these beautiful transitions in and out of human lives.
And valuing and enjoying the death process as much as the birth process, because they bookend. And the birth is so beautiful and wonderful and sacred to us. So is death. So really trying to bring all the parts of death into focus so that we as a human collective can rewrite our programming with death and how we use it and how it serves us.
Well, and we really got to experience that ourselves. Our father passed last July 4th, 2020, in the middle of everything. And it was such an amazing experience because we got to be with him in the hospital after, you know, him being shut away for 4 months in his full care facility, blah, blah, blah. So we really got to move through that as a celebration, you know, and be intentional about it and sit with him and sing over him and just do all the things we wanted to celebrate his passing. Because honestly, it's sad. It's always sad. And there's always grieving, which is beautiful. And there's joy. And we celebrated that he got to transition at that time because it was the divine right timing for him.
And we grieved deeply and fully and beautifully and together, and it forged deeper, intimate bonds for the whole family, and, you know, just all sides of the death process.
It brought together all 7 of us kids for the first time in our lives. I mean, just really honoring the process all the way through, like you would a birth. What it's brought to us, not just us personally, but our family, has been profound.
And then, so our fiction is, are we done talking about that one? Okay. So our fiction series, so we wrote the 3 of the books we have out for fiction side was on Atlantis. We have a whole series, 3 books called the Golden Age series. Colors of Atlantis is the first title, Shadows of Atlantis is the second title, and Atlantis Moirai is the third title. Those are all available based on 10 years of research, including sessions, all this stuff. Our next series is called the Ancestor series, and it is set, the book 1 of that is set in the time of Atlantis, but on the North American continent. So with all the pyramids that were here, with the giants that were here, with where was humanity at that time, as well as what we call the terra beings, which is known as Sasquatch, was very present on the surface and interacted with humanity and the giants, as well as all the prehistoric animals of that time. So what was happening here at the time that Atlantis fell is going to be book 1 of the Ancestor series. We are actively writing that. We do not have a release date. We have no idea when that's going to be done. That's the fiction side of what we're working on. So that's partly why we're going to New York next month. We did all of 2020. We researched that. We hit 16 different states here, partially researching that.
Looking at all the mounds and effigy mounds and the ancient history that's here right under our noses, that none of us were taught in school. So same thing we did with Atlantis. We were just recovering those lost periods of our history, in order to connect us to who and what we are. Because of course, with the indigenous tribes, the ancestors here, it brings in our star ancestors, the Syrians and the Pleiadians and the Native Americans, as we call them now, but really their ancestors were much more connected. And they created these huge works across North America, really Central and South too, all around the world, mirroring the heavens. Serpent Mound is Draco in the sky, and Fort Hill is the rabbit. And the Seven Sisters has its own group of mounds. And so they knew this, and it was just part of their heritage. And we want it to be part of our heritage again, too.
Yeah, so much of it's hidden. Just this morning, I was listening to something about our first president, George Washington, and some of the decisions he made, the first president of these United States of America. And when I heard what I heard, and I'll share that with you privately later, because it doesn't make sense to go into it now, but it was like, oh my God, he knew about the stars, and he knew about the pyramids, and he knew about all of that. Yes. And some of that went into the documents that created the freedom aspect of this country. And wow.
I 100% believe that America has the potential of being the new improved Atlantis. I believe we have that potential. I believe it was set up from the beginning to offer that possibility to us.
Well, and Graham Hancock has been exploring that. The writer Graham Hancock, who we love, and he wrote a book recently, America Before, but he has contended that also, that there's strong ties here to that.
Yeah. So it's up to us, right?
It's up to us to create it.
Yep, to make it manifest. Well, thank you so much. I just love you so much. I can't wait till you're here and I get to hug you, Diana, Donna, and
yes.
and a great big group hug along with others of your family. I can't wait to meet. So thanks so much for joining us today. And thanks so much out there for watching. And please stay tuned to the next episode of Quantum Realms 2021. Bye for now.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now. Thank you, Candace.